Hi everybody, it's Alex Newton from K-lytics, today with our ebook market research about the Christmas romance genre. So let's have a look. In this October 2024 edition, we look at the performance of actual Christmas sales data of books and authors who've done exceptionally well during the days prior to and leading up to Christmas 2023. And by looking at what worked well last Christmas, this should give you some data for tweaking your book or book marketing towards the Christmas 2024 season. This is the 8th year that we conduct this Christmas romance research, and therefore I'd like to extend a big thank you to everyone who supported K-lytics through your purchases of seminars and genre reports or through your memberships. That's what keeps us afloat and enables this research. So thank you very much. And for those of you who are new to K-lytics, this Christmas romance seminar with its report and video also serves as an example for our many different genre reports and seminars that you find in the custom research area of our website, with the newest genre seminars at the top of the table. Christmas romance is of course a seasonal market, and in assessing this market we created, as always, our own virtual bestseller list for the target searches all around Christmas romance. Because when you search the Amazon Kindle store for Christmas romance, the suggestions that Amazon puts forward is first of all a mix of sponsored and organic results, and all of these will not be sorted in order of sales. And the other reason is that in Christmas romance, these books cut across many different bestseller lists and categories within romance and outside romance, literature and fiction, to name a few. And thus, we searched for all these books last Christmas across categories, across various searches, monitored them and established their average sales rank over a period of 60 days from November 1st to December 31st, and then sorted them in descending order of sales, filtering out those that are not Christmas romance, because there are also suggestions by Amazon in the searches that have nothing to do with Christmas romance. And this gives us our virtual bestseller list, which in turn gives us the data provide you with some economic data about the market, but also give you a complete market profile to inform your writing and publishing decisions. As for a simple definition, Christmas romance is of course a romance that contains some Christmas content of some shape or form. And as said, the data for this report is based on books ranking or displayed on the Amazon Kindle store December 22nd to 25th, 2023, and then taking their 60-day sales rank performance from November 1st to December 31st for evaluation. And taking such a longer day period is important because when you look at the performance of any Christmas romance book, the bestseller rank displayed on the book page will essentially be a snapshot in time. That is, sales and borrows heavily weighted towards the last couple of days. And the same applies to the sequence of books that you find in any of the relevant bestseller lists. And if you'd only look at these momentary sales ranks, moments in time, you could fall into what we call the real-time trap, because you might catch a book or a category at its peak performance while only a few days later the sales rank drops significantly. And to avoid that, we monitor the books for a period of 90 days, in the case of this Christmas report 60 days, and compute what we call average sales ranks that cut through the peaks and troughs of the momentary performances, thus giving us a more reliable measure for the performance of the genre as well as for individual books. And with all this analysis, the purpose of the report is then obviously to help you prepare your Christmas romance publishing for Christmas 2024 and beyond, based on what sold well the prior year. And I know this year we are a bit late in the game, but better late than never. The overall market context for romance, and Christmas romance in particular, couldn't be better. Why? Because the overall romance genre is the #1 individual genre out of all the 30 main Kindle categories. And if you leave aside the umbrella category, literature and fiction, this #1 position has been there for a long time. Actually, ever since we started monitoring the Amazon Kindle platform year on year since 2014. And if anything, romance has even further improved. This is the sales development since 2019, where you see a marked increase of the sales rank performance, reaching into this new plateau after the pandemic, all the way here through the years 2021 through 2024, outperforming the sales bestseller list of mystery, thriller, suspense, and we have to squeeze the axis here a bit, also science fiction and fantasy. So here we have this #1 genre, romance, and if we shift to Google Trends, we find here on the left-hand side this blue line, this general search for romance books on Google worldwide over the last 5 years, and that has been on the rise. And on the back of this growing search interest for romance books in general on the left, we have here on the right the specific search interest for Christmas romance books, where you see it is seasonal, of course, but every peak over the last couple of years has been higher and higher. And this rising interest for Christmas romance books has been served by the book supply month on month for Christmas romance on the Kindle platform. And here you see the monthly book supply as the blue line as we go from 10 years ago, all the 120 months to this year's number. Thus, the rising interest has been met by a rising book supply. And over the last 3 years, we see that during the Christmas peak months, we have about 800 Christmas romance titles hitting the market. And if you look at how many of those are in Kindle Unlimited, KU, where authors decided to go exclusive with Amazon for their ebook edition for a 90-day period, you also observe that the majority of the monthly values is this dark blue stack, which is the Kindle Unlimited numbers, but there's also, say, about a third of the books being published as non-Kindle Unlimited. As an approximation, we take all those books that have Christmas in the title, which, as you will see, will very often be the case in Christmas romance, and romance or any of its subcategory as a category. If we take interest level, in this case, we take the broader interest level for Christmas romance as a red line over the last 10 years, month on month, and plot it against the blue line, we see here the book supply versus interest level in Christmas romance as a pretty balanced curve, especially over the last couple of years, with a slight rise both in interest and in book supply. If numbers seem too abstract for you, and I hope I was able to explain them well, let's talk about something everybody can talk about, that is books and covers. So let's go through our top 500 list and examine the type of subgenres and cover designs that have been selling well. First, let's start with the cover design. There are 4 basic cover designs that have various success in the market. And here it is important to look at 2 values. The one in orange boxes will be the share of books. So what percentage of those top 500 fall into the specific cover category. Now, the green number is the share of royalties estimated based on the sales ranks of these covers. The #1 cover design involves a couple or group on the cover. It's usually a love couple. This type of design represents 43% of the top 500 covers. That's up 11 percentage points versus the last year. In line with that, the percentage of royalties is around the same value. The second most used cover design would be that with no person on the cover, so it's more relying on symbols or, say, a Christmas landscape. This type of cover is used by 26% of the books. However, if you look at the share of royalty, it's 41%. That is to say, these type of books, like the top sellers, Lucy Score, Meghan Quinn, they tend to rank very high, so they represent an overproportional share of the royalties. In essence, a very effective cover type in terms of share, slightly down versus the last year, though. The third most used is simply the depiction of a male character on the cover. 18% of the books make use of that one. That's minus 4 percentage points versus last year. And only 10% of the royalties go to this cover design. This type of design lost both in terms of share as well as in terms of effectiveness. And the fourth cover design is that of a female character on the cover. It is 12% of the books that make use of that, slightly down versus last year, but only 4% of the royalties go to this cover design. Most of the books here tend to rank lower in the top 500 that we looked at for the purpose of this analysis, and thus this cover design represents the least effective one. And once you decided on the basic design, whether you would like to have a person, no person, and what type of protagonist you'd like to show, there is also a discussion about the design type. And there are 3 basic design types you should be aware of in this, and for that matter, any other genre. The vast majority of the covers, 49%, are photorealistic covers. Of course, there are some illustration elements on it, but the predominant impression of the cover is that of a photograph. But you see the effectiveness, the relative sales ranks of these covers is lower than for those that we have on the right-hand side. The second cover type is that in the middle. Some look a little photorealistic, others don't look very photorealistic, but it is in essence an illustration. 26% of the covers, 29% of the royalties. And then similar to what you find in Cozy Mystery, we have on the very right-hand side the flat vector graphic, 25% of the covers, 48% of the royalties. These titles rank very high, and we have also seen an increase in market share. The predominant subgenre you'd find in here is probably a romantic comedy, but this segment also benefits from the rise of sports and hockey romance. All right, so much for the design. Let's have a look at what subgenres or categories the high-performing Christmas romance titles have been using, and then what is the sales rank of those various subcategories. Now, in this table, we have the sales performance of Kindle categories often used by Christmas romance titles. The highest selling submarket of all of these is contemporary romance. No surprise, it's a big umbrella category within romance, followed by the other generic category, contemporary fiction/romance. Then it gets more specific, billionaires and millionaires, number 3, then romantic comedy, then sports romance, followed by more generic women's fiction, romance, women's fiction, contemporary categories, and also here the alpha male romance category is a pretty strong market. Now, specifically for Christmas romance, the green shaded ones, romantic comedy, then here the literature and fiction, genre fiction, holidays, and holidays Christmas, which is a fairly new category, as you will see. These highlighted ones are the categories most used by top 100 romance, Christmas romance titles. The table here is from October 2024, and at this point in time, romance, holidays, Christmas is still pretty much at the tail end of this list because we're still a bit pre-season. But if we look at the data from last year where this category was first introduced by Amazon, we can expect that by December, this will go all the way up here into the top 6, the top 7 of this ranking table, where last year we saw that the average sales rank across the top 20 titles in the romance, holidays, Christmas category was around 200. And with that, let's have a look at 2 specific categories that are very often used by these Christmas romance titles. The one is one that has been there for a long time, romance/holidays. And the romance holidays bestsellers has shown a very strong seasonal rank performance over the last 7 years. But as you can see in the graph, it was reset by a number of Amazon changes that happened over the last 2.5 years. Back in September 2022, there was a change in Amazon bestseller list display policy where you were then confined to have your book displayed in only or ranking in only a maximum of 3 bestseller lists. And if the store sales rank was good enough, you could also be displayed in various parent bestseller lists. Now, that was not a big change, but then it started eroding a little bit here at the bestseller ranks, where at first we didn't know was that due to then the seasonal decline after Christmas, and part of it was. However, then combined with the other change that when you upload new books to your Kindle Direct publishing dashboard, you are limited to 3 categories. And therefore, and we can also feel this to the present day, we have overall a decline in sales ranks here across the statistics because we have much fewer high-selling titles using holiday just as a purely tactical category. See, before we had titles using the holiday romance category where the theme wasn't really holiday, perhaps it was really something in passing, and it wasn't really a Christmas romance type of titles, and yet the author put it into that category. Now that you're confined to 3, authors make a much more conscious choice as to whether to use a category or not, and that has benefited also this whole issue of resolving category pollution, which is still there, but to a lesser extent than before. And then another notable change was the introduction of a dedicated Christmas romance subcategory, and more about that in just a second. Let's first have a closer look again at the romance holidays category. That one saw a rare decrease in category size through the years 23 and start of 24. Again, as many authors also removed holidays from the 3 available categories for their books. Plus, it also seemed that there was some cleansing or recategorization that Amazon may have undertaken in a more automated fashion. So what does this chart here show? It is the K-lytics strategy map. Every dot on the map is a category. In this case, we only look at one, the yellow dot, romance holidays, but we look at it over time. And the higher the dot is on the graph, the better the Amazon sales rank. That is to say, the better the level of sales, the further a dot is from the left to the right, the higher the level of competition as measured by the number of titles in the respective category. And through the years, 10 years ago, 2014, all the way up here to 2016, 2017, we had only between 2,000 and 10,000 titles. That's what we call a niche market. And then once it grew beyond the 10,000 title mark, we very much call it a mainstream category. What happened then after October 2022 is that restructuring that we just talked about. So currently, and still in the year October 2024, we're just short of some 20,000 titles in that category. There are a number of other categories that you can map on the K-lytics strategy map in a similar way, and that are often used by top Christmas romance novels. And each of these categories present different levels of sales versus stiff competition. The two most pertinent categories, just by the name of the categories, would be the overall romance holidays categories. Now you see that whilst the category size is around 20,000, the average sales rank across the top 20, at least here in October 2024, so before the peak season, is below the green zone. Alternatively, you could, and actually you should, choose the more specific subcategory, which would be holidays, Christmas. This one is still short of 8,000 titles, and the sales ranks here in October are already very good. Now, there are other evergreen type of romance categories that often associate with top titles in Christmas romance. So there would be markets, mainstream markets such as clean and wholesome, romance later in life, especially if it's blending into women's fiction type of themes. We have here collections and anthologies, women's fiction contemporary, but more competitive. And then all the way up, you could also compete in the very big and very high selling, but also very competitive romantic comedy market. So let's have a closer look at this more recently introduced category. It's Christmas romance. It received finally its own dedicated Amazon romance subcategory, and the sales development towards the expected peak in December that comes up here in 2024. That recent development is very solid and is exactly what you would expect after the lower ranking summer months for a seasonal category such as this. The category was introduced just in December last year. We kept tracking the category like all the other 8,000 categories in our monthly elite category performance database, and combined with the Google trends that we showed earlier, we will see a very, very solid high-selling Christmas romance season. And if we plot this holiday Christmas category on the K-lytics strategy map for the months, for the selected months that we collected here, it is a hot niche market, except for that summer slump. But if we look at where it was last year, you see it's sky high in what we call the hot niche market zone, with categories between 2,000 and 10,000 titles, but also very high in sales. So if we just extrapolate the October 2024 number to what I expect in December, it will be probably up here very high again in the hot niche market zone. Let's compare how a number of the categories often used by top Christmas romance titles have fared over time. First, let's take these three seasonal categories, and of those three holiday related ones used by Christmas romance books, they all of course show a similar seasonality pattern. The highest ranking one right now is still the literature fiction, genre fiction holidays, the green line, which is also doing pretty well throughout the year. More seasonally pronounced is the romance holidays ones in blue and the holidays Christmas one. Then there is romantic comedy, and that one shows very high sales in the Kindle store, and it represents the second most used category for Christmas romance titles. It's been here on a pretty stable trend, perhaps slightly declining, but have a look at the absolute number of sales ranks. The average across the top 20 titles in romantic comedy fare throughout the store between sales rank 100, 80, 60, even here up to 40. That is sky high. And if you're interested in romantic comedy, I'd also recommend you have a closer look at our dedicated annual romantic comedy seminar and its report. Then the recently uptrending clean and wholesome romance category is often a home for Christmas romance titles. We've seen a very stable, solid sales ranks over the last year. And also it's fair to note that the LGBTQ plus romance segment has played a significant role for Christmas romance titles last year, and specifically the gay romance category. In summary, if you want to categorize your Christmas romance title, you can do what the top titles do. Across the top 100, we observed that most of the titles these days make use of the specific holiday romance Christmas category. I think you should definitely do that. Then combine that with the type of romance or women's fiction category that is closest to what the book actually is. So in this case, the second most used one was romantic comedy, as there are many romantic comedies. You could then either reinforce the holiday theme by putting it into a second holiday-related category, such as the literature and fiction, genre fiction holidays one. You actually don't have to use, that's important, the holidays romance one if you put your book into the more detailed holidays Christmas romance one, because if your book ranks in Christmas holidays and has a good enough a sales rank in the store overall or in the next higher up category, it will automatically rank also in romance holidays. So that is also why fewer and fewer people put the book in this category, because you're always better off going into the more detailed child categories. Whichever you choose, you can also have a look at the K-lytics strategy map. This is where all these top categories rank on the map, and you see some are in the green zone where the ratio of sales to competition is more favorable to the orange zone. And for that purpose, we also have this tabular rendition of those categories. And here it's not sorted by frequency of use, but it's sorted by the most favorable sales to competition ratio. If you're not a mathematician, don't worry. It's the second but last column. The higher the value, the better, because it means the higher is the level of sales, as depicted here in the sales volume column, and or the lower is the level of competition. Two of the categories, by the way, that are currently sky high for that value is the sports romance categories, where you have all these super hyped and trending hockey romances, or the evergreen billionaire romance category, where sales continue to be very high, and where still to the present day, more than 10 years after 50 Shades of Grey, there are still only 20,000 titles in the category. Already showed you the top 500 of our virtual bestseller list for this year that we used for the cover type analysis. The virtual bestseller list is not only 500 titles in total, it comprises 6,837 items that were narrowed down from about 70,000 search results. And this virtual bestseller list is achieved by conducting various searches to surface relevant books, then put them all into essentially a project database after focusing on the top 6,000 displays that you get from Amazon per search, eliminating the duplicates. And what's more relevant for you is that we focus on the paid books only. We then filter for book titles and book descriptions that either have a direct mention of Christmas romance or similar wordings, or where we have phrases somewhere in the text, such as Santa or gingerbread, you name it, some winter holiday or festive season related term, and then combine that with words or categories that refer to romance. We also excluded certain books where, for example, the prime positioning was a mystery, or in the very book title, it reads women's fiction. We do have women's fiction titles in there too, but it has to be some romance positioning as well. We also excluded quite a number of books with erotica categories, and that gives us the bestseller list, which is then sorted by that 60-day sales rank average that we computed. And that gives us what we call the rank drop-off, an important measure to judge a market. And it works like this. The number one title in our Christmas romance bestseller list, in this case it would be Lucy Score's title, The Christmas Fix, would over the 60 days rank on average at 15 in the Kindle store, so very high up there, lots of copies sold and borrowed. A number 20 title then here towards the end of the second row would, during the period, the Christmas peak season, still fare around 340 in the Kindle store, so also very high up there. Then once you go down to the 100th title in our virtual bestseller list, you can expect a book still to rank at around 1,800 up to 2,000 in the Kindle store. And even when you go all the way down to the 500 highest ranking Christmas romance title that we identified all the way down here, even the 500 Christmas romance would come out at rank 13,000. So in the top 15,000 of the Kindle store, and even a 1,000th Christmas romance title during those 2 months averages 37 in the Kindle store. So in other words, we're really talking about a significant niche, a seasonal niche market with approximately 100 titles in the Kindle top 2 of the Kindle store market, and plus on top of that a sizable long tail market, which underscores how big a market Christmas romance is during the Christmas season. And if you add all the books and sales ranks together, you would come out at an estimated $2.3 million in royalties per month for those 2 peak months, November and especially December, which, by the way, is a 20% increase over the year before. Then at what prices are the books being sold? Well, no matter whether you're in KU or not, you have to put a price to your book, because even if it's in KU, you also will strive to have some straight customers buying the book if they're not in KU. So pricing is important. And I think the only downside I do see with Christmas romance, apart from the fact that it is a seasonal market, is that you have a lot of promotional pricing. So people lowering their prices for the Christmas deal. It's not so visible actually in the top 20 of the Christmas romance bestseller list we created. The way this works is we have the price point here at the left-hand side of the exhibit, and then you see these dark red bars that show you what percentage of the books, in this case, make use of a specific price point. The most used price point is $2.99, but you see we still have 23% of the books across the board making use of the dismally low 99 cents price point. Overall, the most effective price point yielding the highest royalties would be the $4.99 price point overall, because also a whole number of the $4.99 books tend to rank very high. Inflation doesn't stop in front of the book market. In fact, when we look at the last 7 years of price development for the average top 20 prices in the romance holidays category, it's actually not the Christmas one, only for the last couple of months where that existed, we have it here, but it's very much coinciding with the yellow line, which represents romance holidays overall. The prices have increased, where you see back in October 2017, prices were as low as less than $1.50 per book. Now we're more around that $4 to $5 mark. We can compare then the absolute price for a book with the average book length in the segment, and that has come down over the years. So books have become shorter, because back in the days when we still had a lot of book page stuffing going on, this has come down to a more reasonable level now. We have an average book page length here of between 300 up to 400 pages. I'll show you in more detail where the sweet spot of book length is. But before we go there, with the book length on a decline, while the prices per books have gone up over the years, we have as a result that the average realized price per 100 written pages has increased over the past few years in Christmas romance. That is to say, the realized price for sold copies, not for a Kindle Unlimited page read compensation, that's a different measure, and that is around 1/3 of what we have here for a sold book. All right, so much for pricing the books. And concerning Kindle Unlimited versus non-Kindle Unlimited, in the top 20 bestsellers of our Christmas romance list, virtually all of the books are enlisted in Kindle Unlimited, where authors and publishers have chosen to go exclusive with Amazon, at least for their ebook edition of the book, for a 90-day revolving period, unless cancelled. And for all analyzed books, about 60%, and that's the same level as last year, are enlisted in KU. But because the KU titles also tend to rank high, we estimate that the overall share of royalty is quite heavily tilted towards the KU side of things. You should be aware that looking at KU versus non-KU in the top 400 most sold books in the Kindle store, the share of KU titles has grown to 80% last year. A further remark on the book page length, the length of books. Overall, Christmas romance books tend to be a bit shorter than the usual normal, the non-Christmas romance titles. In fact, across all the 6,000 something titles, we have a share of short reads that is 25%. That is a pretty large share of books that have 100 pages or less. So you can get away with shorter books, but mind you, if we look at how these books are ranking, in the top 20 Christmas romance titles, only 5% are less than 100 pages. In the next 80 books, 14, only in the non-ranking rest of the books, we have that very high share overall. By contrast, if we look at the specific page length the distribution of the page length across the top 100 highest selling titles, there seems to be a clear sweet spot that is between 200 and 300 pages. Of course, if you have to write more, you write more. If you write less, you write less. But this chart depicts a bit of a customer expectation as well, where most of the top 100 highest selling titles have between 200 and 300 pages, as denoted by this middle bar here. Then we come to the list of top performing Kindle authors in Christmas romance based on 60 days of book performance in the peak season 2023. In the table, you find the following information: author name. You can hover over the green icon here and get to the respective author page. We'll do so in a second. What publisher the author using, and as you go down the list, you will see a lot of self-published authors in the mix. Then the number of paid books in the ranking. Now, that number of books is not the overall number of books by the respective authors, but the number of Christmas romance books that made it through the filtering. So some of the authors have a handful, some even more, while yet others just have the one or other title in the Christmas romance list because they just opted to do that one Christmas story. Then a ranking, and then also we see the percentage of authors and which of the authors have been in that ranking in the year before and before and before. In this case, the year number refers to the date of the report issue. So this would be the 2023 Christmas Romance Report, which was based on the peak season of Christmas 2020, where if we go down the list, about half of the authors that are in this year's report were in the top 40 in the year before. So compared to some other genres, I'd say we have a little more churn going on here when it comes to Christmas romance compared to many another genre. Let's have a look at some of these authors. Catherine Walsh, also here, the ranking holiday romance being the most popular book also this year. Top ranking romance authors Lucy Score, Alina Jacobs, Fiona Baker, who has quite a number of holiday Christmas related titles in the mix. Beth Merlin, T.L. Swan, again, an example for an author who's positioned fairly broadly. She does a lot of billionaire romance novels. And of course, some of these, or a special one, it's only natural that an author would then issue one specifically for Christmas. Sherry Lowe, Morgan Elizabeth, Alexis Winter, Kate Stewart, and a whole number of other ones who were successful with their Christmas romance. You can also aggregate the data by publisher name, and here it becomes clear that for important seasonal markets such as Christmas romance, many of the self-published authors are, of course, competing with publishing companies such as Avon, Zebra Books, Myra, Kensington Books, and Martin's Press Berkeley. So we have also a whole number of the bigger names on the list as well. Then let's do a bit of text mining, digging deep into the words contained in titles and book descriptions and relating them to the respective sales ranks of the books. And that allows us to come up with this list of most profitable submarket and tropes. So here we're looking at the most popular themes and characters. The way we do this is that you look at words like small town or village and see what share of the books make use of that term in the title or book description and what are the sales ranks and thus the royalties behind these books. This gives us this ranking. So small town and is very closely related to Christmas romance, and the position is the number one as it was last year. The involvement of a father or dad is the number 2 trope or character, and that's the same position as last year. We already mentioned that romantic comedy is doing very well, so mentions of funny romance, laugh out loud, low romance, comedy, rom-com, you name it. It's also on the increase, +5 position, and overall the number 3 ranked item. Best friend romance, it's the number 4, up 1 position. Then we have the whole segment of clean, wholesome, inspirational romance. Cowboy romance continues to fare pretty well in Christmas romance. It's here now the number 6 position, up 1 from last year. The words that were on the decline: Santa, Sister. Then here, MAA, fighter, sports romance. It is actually hockey romance. That's the most popular term amongst these, and in line with the overall sports and hockey romance hype that we've seen over the last 18 to 24 months. It's not surprising that this has also been now on the rise in Christmas romance. Single dad, single father, and second chance, ranking somewhere here in the middle. Especially second chance is a theme that meshes well with Christmas romance, but it has dropped 5 positions compared to the year before. And then as you go down the list, there are other themes. I was surprised to see millionaire, billionaire dropping quite a bit. So overall, you cannot go much wrong if you involve any of the themes ranked higher up here in the table. And by the way, for the geeks among us, sales versus competition index it's a bit like the K-lytics strategy map. It compares on the one side the royalties earned to the competition as measured by the share of books making use of a certain term. So in this case here, for example, the funny romance number 3, it has the highest possible score, which is 100, because you have here a very high number of value for royalties, but only 5% of the books make mention of the active positioning romantic comedy. And therefore it ends up lots of sales with fairly limited competition, specifically in Christmas romance. Unsurprisingly, when we look at the 30 most frequent words in the top 100 bestseller book titles, holiday, Christmas, and romance clearly are used in the title or in the subtitle of the book to not only help with the indexing of the books with the algorithm for Amazon, but really signaling to the potential reader already in the title, hey, this is a Christmas themed novel. And similarly, you have the words in the book descriptions. Here, the top 50: Christmas, holiday, romance, family, small town, a town, magic, heartwarming, perfect. These are all words that mesh well with high-selling book descriptions that resonate with readers for that season of the year. Then here is an initial list of keywords as a starting point for your further keyword research. Whichever tool you use, the estimated monthly searches are usually very crude because Amazon does not publish the number of searches specifically. Only Google does, and many of the tools use Google volumes with some magic fairy dust formula to come up with some Amazon estimation. Whatever the case may be, this gives you a starting point of what can be used as keywords. Now, mind you always want to check back with the Amazon terms and conditions. What keywords can you use? You cannot. And it's also different for what can you use in advertising versus as metadata in uploading your book. Because in the latter case, you cannot use competitor author names or generic things or attributes such as bestseller. That doesn't work for keywords. So here you have an initial list that gives you a bit of a feel also of what is the volume for the broader searches, such as Christmas romance or Christmas romance books, versus then pretty specific searches, such as, let's take here, Viking historical romance. In this case, it's not directly related to Christmas, but it came up in the various searches and various books as well related to the Christmas search. But the point being, once you get very specific, such as Christmas Regency romance, also automatically the volume drops quite a bit because you overlay a niche, which would be Regency historical romance, with another confinement or narrowing down of the segment Christmas. You end up with pretty small search volumes. When it comes to keyword research, I always recommend you also have a look at the manual search results that you get. For example, if you type Christmas, well, number 2 suggestion is already Christmas romance, which underscores how popular Christmas romance is, even in comparison to a far more generic search, Christmas books. So say you type Christmas romance and then you see what comes up here in specific. You could start playing with the letters of the alphabet, like letter A, so Christmas romance, anthology, Amish Christmas romance. Letter B will always be books. C, clean Christmas romance. So Christmas romance comedy, Christmas romance collection, you get the idea. Now, what is new and was just released is Rufus. Rufus is interesting because as you type here your search terms, you also get Rufus, these are AI suggestions, what other people search or what could be relevant questions. So in this case, let's make this a little smaller. Are Christmas romance books available in Audible, or what themes are common in Christmas romance? So we could click on these, and you see that this new Rufus thing is actually rendering some things here. So for example, very interesting. What themes are common in Christmas romance? Well, rekindling old flames, finding love unexpectedly, family reunions, holiday miracles, and so on and so forth. So the feature is pretty new, but I think it was only a matter of time that Amazon finally put in some AI assistance in the shop experience. All right. Then here once more, the top selling titles, the top 30 and their covers. We did cover analysis in detail, but this is just to round up the top of the list. Also, what's important, how many of the titles are tied to series in some shape or form. Here, naturally, the values are lower than in other segments because many authors just have, say, one title for a Christmas romance and then embed that title in an overall other series or even just have it stand alone. So amongst the top 20 bestsellers for Christmas romance, only 40% of these books are tied to a series. Across all the 6,000 something books, 65%, so 2/3 of the books form part of a series in some shape or form, and 1/3 is standalone. And when it comes to the estimates of the royalties, it's almost a 50-50 split. In other words, in this case, in Christmas romance, standalone titles can be pretty successful, and that is often not the case in many other genres. Now, one analysis, I will have to say we shall double vet the result based on also what comes out in the analysis this year, because I was really surprised by the result. We look at what percentage of the books are sponsored results. Now, against this huge universe of like 6,000-7,000 titles, only a fraction of the books were sponsored results. But what came as a surprise is usually you can expect that that small percentage of sponsored books represents a larger share of the royalties. So when it's a 1% or 10% of the analyzed books, you'd say that you'd expect at least 3 times that share in terms of share of royalties. In this case, it's even a negative value. So it seems that the sponsored results did not on average fare any better. In fact, even worse than the organic search results. And let's see what the data will show this year, whether it holds up. I was very surprised by that. The one hypothesis I could form for it, that selling a Christmas romance much more important will be, for example, your email list and sending all your fans to that one Christmas romance novels and even saying, hey, it is on a discount, which seems to be the case, by the way, for quite a number of the top selling romance authors we had in this Christmas romance list for that year. All right, if you'd like to have a closer look at the specific titles that made it into the ranking, you will find the titles listed here, the top 100 in the appendix of the report. Please note the fourth column with the dark ones versus the light shaded zeros denote those titles that were in the list already the year before. And if you click on the link in the first column, it will take you to the respective book page on Amazon. And if you'd like to see how others use the book descriptions to sell their books, or simply have a look at what the tropes are, what the stories are, we collected all of the relevant book descriptions in the appendix of the report for your convenience. All right, so much for this year's Christmas romance report. I'll send you all my Christmas greetings from Switzerland, where I live. If you'd like to have access to all the genre reports and our K-lytics category performance database, check out the members area, and why not make yourself a Christmas present if you're not a full member yet and go for a premium or elite membership. All in all, so much for this year's Christmas romance report. If you liked it, please do leave a comment in the Facebook comment box below. It does help us. If you have feedback, you can always reach out at support@k-lytics.com. I always look forward to hearing from you. And with this, Merry Christmas. This is Alex Newton from K-lytics, ebook market intelligence for success.